tried something different today. I didn't realize 60 seconds was going to go that fast.
Jenni, the difference maker.
Well, we're trying something different today. We're live on Instagram. Oh man, John Boy's already on this morning. Good morning. Good morning. Lisa's on this morning already. Okay, we've got our regulars ready to go. So we are trying something different. Yeah, it's gonna be a blood pressure raising day. So we're trying something different. We are actually live on Instagram this morning. So that's interesting. I didn't realize it was going to work. So I'm glad it's working. So we now have a new, and we're live on Rumble. So I think we're actually heading in the right direction, like first thing this morning. Isn't that great?
Sure is. I think you need to start a new troubleshooting tech service or something.
Yeah,
well, see how you're doing so good.
Yeah. Oh, yes, I'm doing great. So before we get the ladies on, because we have a great show this morning, I just want to point out something that I woke up a little late, didn't sleep well. And part of the reason why I actually woke up is because I was getting 247 texts about a bill, SB 224, which is a bill to create the state longitudinal database, click it together with the workforce data that's being collected at the Department of Commerce in 6 or 7 different committees, because we don't care about the size of government. It's so, I mean, what does it matter anymore? Some number of committees out over there. And this was a bill that actually died in the House because it had received 2 votes. It was brought up for reconsidering and was brought up and voted against. And then just like magic, Speaker Hilbert was able to just resurrect it like it's a zombie. So SB 224 is a zombie bill. It's dead. If we're going to follow rules anyway, House rules, it's dead. But since, there's no following rules, I think at any point in the legislature this year, I guess it just doesn't matter what we say. So anyway, if you're on, call your senator and tell them that you need them to vote no on SB 224. And I would even just say at this point, it's mainly because it shouldn't even be alive anyway to be voted on. So if we're just going to perpetuate illegality, I'm not sure what a legislature is for. That yes, it is a miracle. It is a miracle. It's very biblical. We just raised it from the dead.
Yeah.
And I don't even know how do you kill a zombie? I mean, there are not even sure. Julia is on. Yes. And as Julia says, rules for thee. But not for me. And I think that's
say that us plebs, we got to play by the rules, but the big boys, they get to do whatever they want. And after we did that Real ID show, Jenni, I wonder just how far in the future it's going to take. Let's say this bill goes through, the databases is in. I wonder how long it's going to take before that's tied into the Real ID in one way or another, that database itself in the future.
Well, didn't Twyla say that once it all becomes digital, then you can put anything you want? And don't forget, we've even our superintendent has been all on board with a digital backpack for kids, right? And we already have them digitally putting their fingerprints on to get their lunches and all this. I mean, it's just, I don't want to, we have great guests this morning and I don't want to because I'm sure we'll want to talk about some of this too. So first of all, I'm going to bring on Kendra Wesson.
You had to put the S in there?
Well, because if I don't remind myself, you'll continue not to get emails.
Wow.
Just saying. All right. And then let's bring on our friend, Representative Conley this morning. Can we hear you?
Uh-oh.
No.
Still can't hear Sherrie.
Yeah. We'll wait for you to get that. And then we have a new guest on this morning. I'm so excited to have her on. Katie Quibedeaux is on with us this morning. How are you, Katie?
Oh, Katie, your mic is on mute.
Oh, hold on.
How are you?
There we go. Okay. All right. We're doing great. And as soon as we get Sherrie's mic up and running, we're all super. So how is everybody today?
Great.
Doing well.
Awesome. I of course am not, but I just have this vision. I know this is like crazy talk, but I have this vision of living in a free country.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now.
Yes.
Yes. There we go.
I
Bada
look
bing.
very blurry on my end. Am I blurry on y'all's end?
Yeah.
You are a little blue.
Okay.
You might just like clean your camera off, your lens off. That might do it. Because sometimes see, that was it. No, well, yeah, no.
Okay. Let me keep playing with it. Y'all keep talking.
It's a beauty screen.
Yes.
Oh, I wonder
Julia
if
said-
the filter on or something.
That
That's better.
Okay.
Juliet.
I'm saddened that our legislative system has become a working criminal activist group, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Wait, Salome, we are not, I'm just helping you here. So don't count this as criticism, but we're not allowed to have opinions like that because it's harassment or bullying, according to our, certainly our pro tem. Our pro tem sent out an email yesterday, a press release explaining about how there have been people basically bullying and harassing people in the legislature this year.
So let's play a game. Let's call out some of the votes that Katie and I voted yes on, and let's see who in the audience would have voted no. You want to?
I think this is a great game.
I'm ready for this game.
March 23, 2023. Parental rights, protecting the rights of parents without obstruction from the government, including sex ed and student disclosure to adults at school. School facilities, protecting female students from having males in their bathroom and changing areas. Media rules, pornographic books in school libraries and classrooms. Approved a data sharing process to protect student, teacher, and school data. Required DEI reporting. What Republican conservative is a no vote there? Anyone?
Well, I don't know.
You don't know. Where's Jenni? We've got a doppelganger.
I know we're kind of giggling about it, but has it not really, honestly, this session just completely gotten out of control?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I have never, and now I've not been in the legislature. I've only been following the legislature. I've only been, trying to influence legislature as a citizen activist for about a decade. I have never seen things happen like you guys just being thrown off the board and other people being put in, and the comments that are being made by people in the legislature about people like Salome and I and you guys who just want to comment. In a representative republic, you vote on the representatives that you want to represent your voice in the House and in the Senate, in our legislative, or in any place, on the school board, whatever. But that doesn't mean that you cut yourself off from the process once they're in. That is a representative. You call them up and say, hey, how's it going today? Just wanted to let you know I saw this bill and please don't vote on that. I have a real problem with that. How did we get to the point where we're not allowed to have comments anymore, vet anybody, or do anything because of the fact that we're somehow harassing somebody?
Because like we talked about, it's become a kingdom. It's a kingdom of leadership, and then we're just the peasants, and they know what's best, and we shouldn't speak.
Well, I'm going to turn it over to Kendra. I'm going to turn it over to you and Katie and kind of throw it in your direction. And then, Michael and Sherrie and I will kind of take your lead. But I wanted you guys to come on, and I'm so glad to have Katie today to talk a little bit about, kind of whatever you want to talk about, because it seems to me like certainly on social media, and I would say even to some extent in the press, there's a narrative that I don't think is correct. So, Kendra?
You're right. And it's clear, and it saddens me because I don't know where the ball was dropped. Are we not educating people properly? Or are they not learning what they need to know before they make comments? The biggest fallacy is that the State Board of Education works the same way that a school board of education works. And the thing that people are forgetting is that Ryan Walters is a statewide elected official. And when you suppress his voice, you suppress the voice of the votes he got, more than Governor Stitt, by the way, that put him in that office.
Well, how, I guess this is part of let's try to get people to understand. There's been a bill after the governor threw you guys off the board and got new people on, which essentially is going to happen, because conflict of interest doesn't matter, and associations don't matter, and vetting actually is a process that harasses people. That's where we are. Mm-hmm. So we know that they're going to be appointed to the board no matter what. So after that happened, there was also a bill that came up that would allow board members to add something to the state board agenda. Would you like to address that to kind of help people understand?
Katie, you want me to take this one?
Sure.
You okay? Katie's quiet.
I'm a quiet one.
So there's so many layers to this. First of all, if two people come together and can put something on the agenda, is there a limit? Do you have an agenda with 100 items? Do you have a 4-day board meeting? So what does that look like? I would be curious. The second thing is you have a chair of a board that sets the agenda for a reason. And is he able to say, no, that doesn't fall under your jurisdiction? Because the State Board of Education doesn't run OSDE. They vote on certain statutory items, and it's located under Title 70, 3-104. And it's the supervision of the public school system of Oklahoma, but then it lists out what they can and can't vote on. So we couldn't go in and vote or say, fire this specific person. I mean, you could put some weight there. You could make some comments outside of the boardroom and maybe do it that way. But at that board table, there are certain things the Board of Education has a say in and certain things that they don't, because it's a very unique board. I don't know of another board in Oklahoma where the chair is a statewide elected official. So so for instance, Nebraska, the Board of Education is elected and then they hire the superintendent, just like a regular school board in Oklahoma. So our Board of Education, he's elected, and then the governor, and they changed that some years back to where the governor appointed all 6. So it's just such a unique makeup, and I think it's throwing everyone. So when you talk about people on the board putting items on the agenda, it's terrifying. It's a Pandora's box of battle after battle. Can it be on the agenda? Does that fall under your jurisdiction? What is the role here? And there's not a lot that board can do to stand against the superintendent's will, other than just begin voting everything down. Just vote everything down. But then you stop the cycle of school production and what's going on in schools for that entire year, because everything is on a very tight schedule.
Well, let me point out something too. We did a special report essentially over the recording of Chris Vandenhen's appointment committee meeting of this Senate Education Committee, where he was brought up for appointment. And one of the things that we were fairly mortified by in his testimony was him saying, I don't know what Ryan Walters' agenda is. And then he goes on basically to say nobody has ever come forward from the department to introduce themselves, or I've never had any contact with them. And then one of the first things that Mary from Visit said at that point was, well, how can you be expected to put anything on the agenda if you have no idea what goes on inside the building? I mean, thoughts?
Katie?
I mean, my thought would be, to me, the state superintendent, Ryan, knows what needs to be on the agenda. There are deadlines that have to be met and things that have to take place at certain times throughout the year. And obviously, someone especially just starting, they do not know those necessary requirements. They don't know what to expect. And so if they start letting them bog down the agenda with, I'm just going to say, their narrative of what they want said and what they want done, then reality is that we're not going to be able to accomplish what has to happen throughout the school year for schools to get their funding, for waivers to take place, for all of these different things that have to happen. And sadly, at this point, I don't feel that they necessarily know all of those moving parts. And their thought is just to come in and make sure that they are able to help control, for lack of a better words, what Ryan wants. And that's not the way it's supposed to work, or it can work, because what we're going to see is the schools getting bogged down and timelines not being met because they're filling it with unnecessary agenda items. That's kind of my thought on that.
That's a great perspective. I agree with that.
Well, let me ask you this question, because this is a good question. Are you guys given a training or set of rules when you're nominated, or is it the responsibility of each board member to educate yourself on these nuances? Great question, Becky.
You can, when you get your first, so when I got my very first agenda in January of 2023, I sat down with Superintendent Walters and then Attorney Brian Cleveland. We went through the agenda. It was fast and furious. We were voting on a budget that Joy had created. We took a couple of things off, and that was the extent of the training for that first board meeting. So you get your agenda, and what I did, and no, they're not hand feeding you anything. So what I did was I got online, I pulled the statutes of my role. I pulled the administrative rules of the role. And I printed those out, and I made this big, huge binder with all of those things in it so that I could easily locate things. And then as you have questions before each board meeting, you have staff and counsel available to you to clarify those questions. So you may have each individual board member asking counsel the same questions individually, and then counsel comes back with the same answer. And so you would see lockstep voting in that sense, because you had gone on the advisement of counsel in matters of personnel, district transfers, adjudication roles where we're judging certificates and things like that. There's a lot of there are conversations that happen outside of the board meeting, one-on-one with counsel, as you have individual questions. That's perfectly legal. That's the way it's supposed to work. You really have to, I know Katie and I went to trainings and meetings and really wanted to get into the pulse of the communities of what teachers were feeling. Katie is an educator, so she had a great view. She does a lot of work with DHS and childcare facilities. So she is a wealth of knowledge and trained. So she caught on, I felt like, really quickly, because she was already in that world. And I had just come from serving on a board, so I had some knowledge. But we also have 12 hours of board training that the Department of Education provided, where we would sit down with staff and they would do a whole training after every board meeting, separating the board members out: child nutrition, finance, OCAS coding. But that happens over time. It's not before that first meeting. So we were just getting really good at our job.
So say it again, Katie. What?
Oh, we did we talked about the special education, like all the different parts. We went in and had training with each of those areas of the State Department so that we could learn more about it. But in addition to that board training that they provided, you know, I know Kendra did, myself, every time you get that agenda and we would go over it, you spend hours of research and educating yourself and contacting those departments and finding out what is the rules, what does state statute say, where do we come from? And so your research, I know that there's lots of criticism as far as you go into the board meeting and no one asks questions. Well, I don't know of anyone, and I would hope even, you know, our legislators read these bills and do research before they go to the floor and vote on them, you know? And so you spend those hours studying it, asking your questions beforehand so that you're going into the meeting with an educated vote. You're not just reading it for the first time at that board meeting and deciding yes or no.
Well, I want to follow up, if you don't mind, on what you just said there, Katie, because
absolutely,
what you said makes 100% sense to me. And having served on a board myself, I completely agree with that. If you go into the meeting unprepared, you're certainly going to ask a whole bunch of questions. But if you're prepared and you know the agenda and you're educated about the topics that you're going to be discussing, basically the other board members can have questions amongst themselves and should, if there are issues that crop up. Like, for example, you do your individual research, Kendra did hers, you guys may not understand, you may not have the same opinion about it, or you didn't quite understand it. So you'd want to ask questions of each other, or just bring things up. Hey, and I completely understand that. But here's, to kind of ping off of that, I've seen quite a bit of talk on social media, even though it's bled off into the media, whatever you call that, mainstream media, which is that you voted in lockstep with the state superintendent and you never disagreed about anything. And here's what I wanted to say about that and see kind of what you thought about this perspective. It has been my perspective that quite early on, Governor Stitt and Superintendent Walters were buddy-buddy. I mean, they seemed like pretty good friends. And if that's the case, and the governor appoints you, Katie, and Kendra, and the other board members to the board, and you serve at his pleasure. That's what the terminology actually says. You serve at his pleasure, meaning if he is displeased with you, then he will remove you, right? So you serve at the governor's pleasure. So if the governor and the superintendent are in lockstep and you're serving at the pleasure of the governor, would it seem odd for you to be voting no on agenda items or against the agenda of the superintendent?
I think so. There were a few things that Superintendent Walters and I didn't agree on. Specifically, I don't like shortening school years. I don't like it at all. I don't like kids having long school days. I don't like kindergartners on buses for, and having a school day that's 9 hours long in rural areas. So I was not a fan of approving those waivers for less school days. We have a minimum of 165. The states around us are around 180. With the waiver, they can go to 155. If you add in 10 virtual days, then they're down to 145. And when you ask the superintendents if they work on those virtual days, they say, oh, no, those are just review days. So obviously they're not doing anything. So that's 145 days. We were in conflict on transfers, on saying that schools should accept students out of district. They have criteria they have to meet. If kids aren't following that criteria and then want to transfer back into that school the following year, that school can say no, and they can appeal all the way to the Board of Education. A lot of times we had some knockdown dragouts on transfers, but you're having those in executive. And so we weren't always lockstep. And I went through the minutes yesterday after seeing all those comments, and I found just with a quick overview 5 times that we weren't in locksteps. We had a vote on Sovereign School. Zach Archer was new to the board. He voted to keep Sovereign School open. We all voted to close it because we had that history of the last meeting of seeing that they were too financially risky. Great people, they did their best, but it wasn't viable. And him not knowing, they came and did their speech, and he was like, hey, I like this school. I think we should keep him open. But he had missed, he wasn't on the board previously. So there is some value to tenure and time and experience. You have school waivers to waive fees when they don't turn things in on time. No one on the board wanted to take additional money from schools through a fine when they're already, struggling at times. So it would make sense that most of the time you would agree. And Ryan and the governor were in total lockstep agreement until January of 2025, in my opinion.
So I want to point out one more thing, but they didn't vote in lockstep. And anyone who watched those meetings saw Kendra and Katie ask many questions and vote in dissent. In my opinion, the effective members were removed.
I love that. Kendra is amazing. Well, and I would add that to say too, that there were times that we were so didn't agree that we even tabled some agenda items until we could gain more information about it. Because, again, we didn't want to just go lockstep with what the State Department was recommending. And so we would add that item to add more time for us to do that research. But again, going back to the majority of the votes being lockstep together, as Kendra played her game at the beginning, I believe that most of us don't want pornographic materials in our libraries, and most of us do not want, men in women's restrooms. And so to me, that my question would be, like she said, who is not going to vote for that matter? If you're a conservative Christian with those values for those children, I would hope that everyone would be a yes vote for that.
And there were only really 2 controversial votes that we got a lot of emails about that I remember. And one was over boys and girls sports and bathrooms. Parental rights, the school has to disclose if a child talks about their sexuality to them to the parent or the guardian within 30 days. And then the most recent one over immigration status. The rest of it is just business as usual. So you can say that the controversy comes in when Ryan's creating rules that we need to vote on. So that's when the controversy occurred. Mm-hmm. But it feels like to me, they're laying this foundation of, and it was said by someone in a hearing, the previous board was not doing their job. And so there's this foundation of, if you vote lockstep, you're not doing your job. So now when these new board members come in, who, in my opinion, were largely brought there to disrupt, let's just be honest. When they disrupt, it's going to look like now they're doing their job. And the left is very good at laying the train tracks. And it looks like some of our friends on the right are becoming quite great engineers in that regard as well. So we're laying this foundation, we're creating this narrative. So my ask of the public would be to rise above it, to look at the kind of votes that were being made, to educate yourself about how this Board of Education works. Don't fall into sheeple.
This is another good one. So do Oklahoma schools not currently require proof of citizenship for school enrollment? Let's just start with that one. So just answer that question. Do schools not currently require proof of citizenship for school enrollment?
So they take the information in. Last fall, Ryan Walters put out an executive order for them to report that information to OSDE. 3 large districts that I know of, Edmond, Mustang, and I believe Norman, put out a letter to their community that they would not be reporting the status of citizens in their district. So then he had to take it one step further and make a rule to require it. And if we don't know, and guys, these are complaints out in the community from teachers all across the state. Katie's getting them. I'm getting them. Mm-hmm. So many non-English speaking children that it's inhibiting the education of Oklahoma citizens who are English speaking. So if you don't know the stats on what is happening, how many there are, how in the world are you going to deploy the proper resources to correct it? How do we need English language centers for kids to go to for 3 months until they can speak the language and migrate back into school? Do we need more, ESL teachers? What do we need? So the schools are like an alcoholic family sometimes. They want to hide all the things and not let anyone know what's going on inside, which inhibits growth and healing and movement towards a better, prosperous future for our students. We have to know this information.
So
Okay.
I want to point out.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's okay. I want to point out that the last I checked, you have to take a birth certificate to the school in order to enroll. And so if you have an American birth certificate, then they know that you are not an illegal immigrant. Anybody else who is an illegal immigrant is not going to have an American birth certificate.
So they collect it, but they weren't reporting it.
Right. Right. But I'm just saying that they know, and they can, and I'm sure somehow, it's been a while since I've looked at a document like the way for whatever. The last time I was in a school was in when was that? I was in 2018, and had the opportunity to look at the information that was gathered for students, and the information may be there, but whether they're reporting it or not is another story. So I just wanted to say that they do know who is illegal and who is not.
Well, and I want to point out too, I'm going to just add this. There is, and I'm going to read this for those of you that can't read it. The Office for Civil Rights administers the civil rights data collection, a mandatory, that means must, biennial, every other school year survey of all public school districts and schools in the 50 states, Washington, D.C., and the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico. These data are collected from all public schools and districts, as well as long-term secure justice facilities, charter schools, alternative schools, and special education schools that focus primarily on serving the educational needs of students with disabilities under IDEA or Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. One of the things that they must collect is citizenship information that has to be collected. And it frustrates me to no end that I'm not sure how the governor's people didn't know that this happened, to advise the governor that it happened. Because, I mean, in my personal opinion, from what I've seen, our governor adores federal funding. So if he wanted to continue getting federal funding, this is a mandatory reporting that has to be done. So basically, in my personal perspective, you were fired for zero reason, because that just simply had to happen anyway. And I want to point out another comment too. Salome mentions here, and I think that's a very interesting thing, birth certificates could be a birthright certificate. And if that's the case, that's a child who has been born here of not necessarily legal parentage, who more than likely don't speak the language.
Right. Yes. I was going to point that out, that that you do have to recognize that. But they still collect all of that information. And, and then I wanted to also mention that, we've got the homeless situation that we keep talking about in this country and in the state. And children, because it was such a big deal made on my House Bill 3958 that they thought they had to change, that if you're a homeless child, you may not have access to your birth certificate. And, I'm not sure what they're doing there. And I'm just going to use the banking system as an example, that we've got the people who may not have IDs anymore. My brother being one of them, for example, and he goes into the bank and he no longer has to provide his driver's license at the banking institution that he uses. All he has to have is a code word, and that code word is put on his bank account. Of course, he has to have the bank account number, but he has to have a code word. He doesn't have to have his ID. And so, what kind of changes are we making within the school systems that we're making those modifications for homeless and for the illegal citizens in order to be able to use, government services and other private services that do not have the proper resources and proper identification pieces in order, that everybody else is required to have. I mean, how many times have you tried to go in and get a driver's license or whatever else? And, nope, you can't. You've got to have XYZ. How are these other people doing that? And how are they navigating the system if they don't? I know that's been conversation. Anyway, I'm kind of rambling.
No. I mean, I think that's excellent, but I do want to point this out that Catherine, who asked the question, said, this issue is making me really side with Walters. We deserve to know the exact data. They all want our data. Well, we want this data. Can we FOIA it? And that's a really good question. Mm-hmm. Can that, I know that the wave, and Julia can probably help me remember the bill, but back in 2014, we helped Representative, that I'm suddenly blocking his name, on a data bill. And one of the things in the data bill said that parents could see all the data points that were being taken on their children. And so the wave, which is that book, if you want to call it, of data that is collected on children in Oklahoma, is supposed to be open for everybody to see. I've posted the link to it numerous places. And if you just click on the link, you can open it and read all the data in there for yourself, Catherine. And I will tell you that it will make you nauseous. I would not read it if you have blood pressure issues and you're not on medication. If you're prone to crying, I would read it with a box of Kleenex next to you. It absolutely does include collecting information on illegal citizens. What is that? What even is that? Illegal students. So anyway, if one cannot speak nor understand English, where are we allowing them in schools? And ladies, I don't want to stomp on you guys because you've got a lot of really great information. So speak up.
Well, that is in our state constitution that, and it actually uses the word may, but that education will be provided. I think that what's really been tough is it is now May 21st of 2025, and we're still getting negative feedback. And I know that it's coming from people who we probably shouldn't give a lot of weight to their opinions. And it's really tough when you serve 2 years and you really give it your all. Katie is a 100%er like I am, and you become caught in what became a political crossfire between two powerful men. And then as they bring the new people in, these legislators continue to perpetrate a narrative that we were not doing the job, that we were, I think I was called a sycophant of Ryan Walters last week. And I just went on social media and I thanked the lady for her kind comment. And she was like, I hope you don't think that was a compliment. And so I just didn't respond. But you talk about mean girl city, Oklahoma politics, like 8th grade mean girls personified by a bunch of adults who should know better.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're right. The majority of them are female.
This was the issue that caused the big rip with Stitt. Kendra explained why it's so important, but Ryan went and sued Kamala Harris to pander to Trump instead of frame it similar to how Kendra did. How do you both feel about how Walter shares his opinions?
Becky.
She's got, I'm telling you, I love Dr. Pelham.
I'll say this. I feel like when you are being attacked from every direction, every day, I know the emails, the messages, the threats that I personally received only as a board member. So I cannot imagine the amount of threats and stress that's been put up on Ryan and his family. I mean, remember, he has young children and a wife. So I can only imagine what he receives. So when you're on the defensive, every day you wake up knowing that you're going to be attacked. You wake up knowing that you're probably going to receive a threat of some kind. When that comes at you every day, eventually that's going to wear on you. And even the most positive person with the most positive attitude, eventually that's going to get to you, and it's going to affect the way you respond. It's going to affect your personality. Honestly, I can say for myself, going through all of this, I have definitely changed, and I'm not going to say it's necessarily for the better. I've learned to have to stand up for myself and say things in a stronger tone than I ever would have before. And so while it may not always come off the best way possible or in a positive tone, I think that we have to remember the backstory that led to that, right? Because if we look at the beginning to where we are now, there's been a lot of change. And you can see the tone, the attitude, the things changing. And I think that is important to recognize.
And I would go back to, and even I would say to Katie, I would say, well, he's not doing anything outside of what he campaigned on. He's not doing anything that he said he wouldn't do. He stayed true to that. And from the beginning, we said things like, it's like everybody's mad because he campaigned a certain way, and then he didn't change like a lot of politicians do and cower and cater. Ryan is not going to do that. He's principled. It doesn't matter who comes against him. He's just not going to pander. He's very, you can tell he was a great coach, because his eye is always on the ball. I would go in there to have a talk with him about something I was upset about. And maybe, he'd let me he'd hear me out. And then the next thing I knew, we were talking about where we were going next, what he was going to improve next, the improvements that had happened in the building. And he just takes you on a whole other journey of what could be, because he's out there looking at what's upcoming in the big picture. And I tend to get caught in the weeds. And so our personalities were different in that way. But I felt like so many times I would think, so he's doing what everyone wanted. Everyone wants someone to stand up, fight the man, fight the machine, take a stance. And then it's like, oh, wait, sit down and shut up, because we didn't mean like that. You're too bold, or you're too loud, or you're too aggressive, or you didn't have to say it that way. And we're looking for perfection. And I think we should be looking for outcomes and what has happened, and when people do what they say they're going to do.
Well, and
I want to just real quick with your time on the board and just the opposition that's come against you guys and Ryan especially. Do you feel like that opposition is more money related, or because of the policy, or because of Ryan's policy actions?
Hang on a second. I want to address the communication issue, and then we'll go to that. I want to say that if you look at the differences between J.D. Vance and Donald Trump, they have two different communication styles. And so, Ryan Walters is very direct. He's very, I'm going to say what's on my mind. I mean, there's a lot of times whenever I watch him and think, wow, you really held your tongue on that one. And I'm very impressed, at how you were able to, say what you wanted to say and, not come across hateful. But then there's other times when he's just extremely direct, and some people can't handle that. And J.D. Vance, on the other hand, he is very calculated. He is very intentional in what he says, but you can tell that his words are guarded. And so I think that it's a communication style that some people are not really comfortable with.
True.
And you just have to look at it and go, this is how he communicates. He's not trying to be hateful. He's just being direct and straightforward. Mm-hmm. And, people are going to, they're going to be critical of that.
Exactly. And in the PC world, people have been trained to be critical of that now. In this world, the way that culture has shifted in language, that has changed.
Yeah. And I would add to that to say, I don't think you're going to find anyone with a bigger heart for children than what he has. His heart's there. It's in the right place. But we also have to keep in mind that the media is presenting to you only part of a conversation. So while there is a 5-minute speech going on, they're going to pull out those 10 seconds of what they want you to hear rather than the whole picture.
And they are actually trained for that.
Yes. But with that, thank you so much. I had a prior commitment coming in at 10.
Hi, Katie.
And so I've got to jump off. But I appreciate you guys so much. And thank you for all that you do.
Well, thank you, Katie, for being here. It was a joy to have you. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Alrighty.
All right, Michael, going back to the money. So everything in politics goes back to the money. Mm-hmm. And there is nowhere where money is wasted better than in government. I mean, there's that's a whole other conversation. Yeah. Being an accountant, I've worked in government accounting, private accounting, public accounting. And I think it feels like certain people feel that they put Superintendent Walters where he is, and that certain people feel like there was a price for that and there was a toll to be paid. And I don't think Superintendent Walters felt like he owed a toll. How about that?
Well, and I do want to point out, and people will have to, I hope Katie tunes in at least to see that people were thanking her, several thank yous. I had not met Katie previously. This was my first meeting with Katie. Just from her being on the program for the unfortunately short amount of time that she was, it's clear to me that she is an excellent communicator. I mean, the way that she answered that question, I thought was pretty unparalleled. I mean, that was really an excellent answer, and she explained that well. And I'm not trying to be ugly, and you can call me a bully or harassing or whatever, Senator Paxton, but that's not what I'm doing here. I would suggest that anybody take this video, take the sections of both Kendra and Katie expressing themselves and communicating here today, and I want you to match that with the way Mr. Vandenhend communicated to the Senate Education Committee for his hearing last week. And it is my personal opinion that there isn't a good comparison to make here. No. These women are by far better communicators than that particular man. And I haven't watched the other two yet, Mr. Tinney, and I'm sorry, who's the other one? The one who can't read the standards and wasn't able to read at all? Deathridge. So I haven't seen those, but I'm just comparing what I've heard you ladies say to what Mr. Vandenhend said. And I would suggest, I may have a different opinion than you, and that's fine. That's what this program is for. But I suggest that you do that. And our video is up, and you can go to the YouTube channel or the Rumble channel and find that. And I suggest you do, because it is my opinion that this move was a complete disservice to the state of Oklahoma and children in this state and parents.
Well, I know it affected a lot of people, and it continually gets brought up to me because there were grassroots and someone, definition of grassroots being whatever you believe it is, but there were people on that board who communicated with the community, were in touch, and Governor Stitt's press secretary asked me, what is the problem with the grassroots? And I said to her, the problem is you guys don't know what the problem is that the grassroots are having, because they had someone that was actually communicating with them and explaining to them what was going on and trying to educate about the way things worked. And Oklahoma is really weird right now in that we don't want to have open conversation and transparency. We just want to be mean and dig at each other and make stances. And we were all about improving public education, which requires hard conversations, and to be berated for sitting at a table and bringing up things, asking Tulsa Public Schools, Dr. Johnson, how many different languages are being spoken in your school? And, she would give me I'll get back to you on that. Well, she never did and never would have. And many times I would ask tough questions, and they're not held accountable by this public for those things. But the public, the bottom line is Ryan Walters is not liked by certain people. So there are Republicans who are going to cheer for clearly left-leaning board members just because they're mean to Ryan Walters. And that's really sad.
Yeah, I'm pretty concerned about
Sherrie, your microphone is way low. Can you turn it up or get closer maybe? Because it's an odd situation, but you're getting even further away.
Okay. Let me fix it. Okay, can you hear me now?
Oh, yes.
Bingo.
Better.
Am I yelling? I don't want to yell.
No. You're great. But we can. I even had a comment that said, "Can you please ask Sherrie to turn up her microphone?" You weren't being able to be heard very well. Go ahead.
Okay, good. Well, I just want to point out that I have heard that there are comments being made by one or some of these board members. Everybody has to hear about sexual assault in schools when they have a conversation with me, because there's just no way for me to not talk about that. And so, I am hearing from multiple people that one or more of the board members have said, well, these are those people's livelihoods. And when you talk about a person's livelihood over the safety of a child, that puts me on high alert with that person and on every other issue. Because if you're sitting on a school board and your first duty is to protect children and to make sure that schools are protecting children, and that is the first thing that you say, everything else that falls out of your mouth is going to be question free. So that's kind of where I stand. And I hope that everybody else looks at that and sees that if you are putting the priorities of a teacher or a school employee over a child's safety, your morals and your values are questionable to me.
And let me tag on to that. When a case comes to the Board of Education to decide about revocation of a certificate for some type of abuse, whatever type of abuse that is, by the time the board gets it to go into executive session to discuss it, it's gone through multiple investigators. They're not bringing every little petty complaint to that board. You are only getting the high profile, well-proven items. And so 9 times out of 10, they're ready to be revoked and the proof is there. Mm-hmm. And so to say that it's their livelihood, and I can't discuss these executive session items, but they're things that you would probably have nightmares about at night that have happened to these little children. And for the general public to think that sexual assault or abuse is exempt from a school, I can't even comprehend that. Listen, it's everywhere.
It is. And I have read so many court documents and so much of what is being said in the courtrooms that it really, there's been some of them that I have just had to stop reading the court documents because it was so horrific what some of these people have done to our young people. And so I also want to say that the State Department of Ed now has 4 investigators, and I believe all 4 of them are from OSBI. And, you're not going to get a half-butt investigation from a retired OSBI agent. You're just not. They're going to do their due diligence, and they're going to dig, and they're going to talk to everybody they need to in order to build that case. And so for people to think that the state board is going to summarily suspend or revoke a license based on hearsay and whispers, they are completely ill-informed, and they need to be doing their homework. They need to be asking the questions and call up to the State Department and ask, what are you guys doing in order to vet these people? I cannot impress upon everyone how thorough the investigations are, and it is really making me ill having to read the court documents and stuff. But I'm writing a book on it, and I'm going to expose some of these schools that have really done our children wrong, and people will see. If they read the book, they will see.
And lawsuit after lawsuit being filed against these schools that they're losing because of failure to protect.
And millions, it's costing millions of dollars in taxpayer money. And taxpayers think, oh, well, I don't have any kids in school, it's not going to impact me. Yes, it does impact you. It impacts the mental health of our children that are coming up. Kendra, you and I had a conversation about one person in particular that is a victim of sexual assault in schools, and how it has just completely devastated that person's life. And I mean, there's 1 in 10 kids are going to be impacted by sexual assault, harassment, and abuse. And so, sorry, I could go on and on. You know I could. So I'll be quiet.
So solution oriented, I sit here and we're having this conversation and I'm thinking in my head, what's the solution? What do we do? These board members are confirmed. They're there. I'm sure
they haven't been. Wait. They haven't been confirmed by the whole Senate yet. Just by
I thought he had his vote yesterday. I apologize. I misspoke.
I don't believe so. No.
So they're not required to read your emails. They're not required to respond to them. Their only requirement is the mandate laid out by Governor Stitt in his office. So that's sad. And there's a communication breakdown there between the public and the board. So I would pray that those board members would be encouraged to be involved with the community. We definitely learned a lot. We were able to suggest improvements in the accreditation process and other things, because we didn't just listen to what happened at board meetings. We went out and visited and made sure that we understand what the communities are dealing with and the things that are going on. And, for Katie and I, we understand that, that time that we served is over. It was wonderful. We enjoyed it. We've moved on to other things. We are chairing the Trump Education Advisory Committee, and that is going very well in implementing some of President Trump's education agenda items. And I think we were just both feel really blessed that we were able to have the 2 years that we had. We really enjoyed it.
Well, I'm going to go back, if you'd let me. I want to go back to something, and I'll be honest, I don't remember whether it was you or Katie that talked about how they're flipping the narrative, and how, was it you, Kendra?
Mm-hmm.
I think it was. I want to read something, and I can pull it in. I think I'll pull it in if you don't mind. I have a mouse that doesn't really care for me very much, and it tends to do its own thing. So I have no idea sometimes what I'm going to come up with here. All right. This was a lot of us don't read the Daily Oklahoman, and Woklahoman, as a lot of people call it. But this impacts you directly, Kendra, just because this is the man who has now been appointed to take your place. But originally, Senator Lonnie Paxton, who's also the pro tem of the Senate, had said that he was not going to carry Mr. Tenney's appointment to the Senate Education Committee, because originally his own senator, because you're supposed to be brought by the senator from your district, and his own senator, Lisa Standridge, had said that she would not carry his nomination. And so Senator Paxton said he would not. And then he changed his mind and said that he was going to go ahead and carry the nomination. And I wanted to point out something that you can see this on your screen right now. Lonnie Paxton harshly criticizes emails believed to be orchestrated from far-right sources. This is what the Oklahoman says. Now, I personally think this is hearsay. It's not journalism, but I'm going to read it to you nonetheless. What caused Paxton's change of heart? It remains uncertain. But during a confirmation hearing for board nominee Chris Vanden Hende on Thursday, May 15th, which again, we reviewed on a special report last Monday, Paxton took an unusual step for a Senate pro tempore. He spoke out against what he and others believed to be an orchestrated email campaign against Vanden Hende from far-right Sources. Some of those emails compared Vanden Hund to Mikhail Gorbachev, the former leader of the Soviet Union, and others attacked Vanden Hund's family members. We can talk about that later, but Paxton spoke about his disgust with the campaign and said the messages were written, quote, by people who feel empowered by a keyboard, unquote, who, quote, send emails at 2 or 3 in the morning, unquote, and called their content, quote, unfair, hateful opposition, unquote. Quote, if you shared those things, then you are part of the problem, he said. Now, we did discuss this for quite a bit on that video. Again, if you'd like to go look the video up and see what we said about that. But this directly goes to what you were saying. So they are attempting at this point, our legislature is attempting at this point, and I'm going to point the finger specifically at Pro Tem Lonnie Paxton, is attempting to flip the narrative, and instead of us being grassroots Republican constitutional conservatives, we're now far right, and we're just keyboard clackers at 2 a.m. in the morning blabbing about things that are out of our purview and that should not be heard by those who represent us in our state legislature. Does anybody agree that that was basically what Senator Paxton was saying, or am I off base there?
Yeah.
So this far right conversation has been happening. I noticed it about a year ago, and it's that same name calling, bullying type behavior. And I remember asking someone in the governor's office, what is far right? What does that mean? And it probably means something different for everyone, just like grassroots, just like rhino, just like establishment, all these terms, the 8th grade name calling terms that we've all been reduced to. And that probably sounded really mean. Sorry, guys. I know a lot of you use those terms, but I think I'm just exhausted with it because they have a different meaning for different people. And at
this point, honestly, I'm with you, Kendra, and we might as well all just do this. Nanny, nanny, boo, boo.
It's not effective for change.
It's just getting ridiculous.
Yeah.
So I'm just when I have conversations with people, I'm having to define terms when they go, well, he's establishment. And I'm like, really? Well, tell me more. What does that mean? Or he's grassroots, or he's far right. Really? Tell me more. What does that mean? Because I need to understand what their understanding is of that term before we can move further in the conversation. So far right, to me, when I hear people say it and it's used in a sentence, far right are the people who have unwavering opinions about right and wrong, typically very Christian, Christ-centered and focused. And it's no fun for people in the middle to deal with the far right because they aren't malleable and they aren't easily swayed to their opinions. They've done their research. They have a confident knowledge of who they are and what they know. And so the term far right means pain in your butt, I think.
Yeah.
Well, and I love this one. I would have written my email at 6 p.m. if I wasn't forced to work full time and homeschool my kids. I can't explain how elitist, and yes. I'm using a term, and I'm sorry for doing that, but I mean, at some point in time, we're going to have to use terms to describe some things. And I felt that comment by Senator Paxton was extremely elitist. There are people that he represents that have to work a night shift, and they have every right to address their government, because that's what a constitutional republic does, is the people who are actually involved. And I see all these people around who aren't at all. I mean, I look at my Facebook feed and go, gosh, I wish I was able to run around and feed my chickens today and not pay any attention to the fact that they're hearing a dead zombie bill at 224 that's going to grab every kid and turn them into a widget for the Chamber of Commerce, and also Americans for Prosperity, apparently, because anyway. So I personally believe that what's happening right now, And it started with you, unfortunately, Kendra, you and Katie, and your other board member. I think the idea now is to flip the script and make us, we who identify together, the bad people. And I don't know how else to explain it. I'm sorry, I stepped on somebody.
No, well, what it is, what it seems like and looks like from my perspective, and I know you feel this way, and the group and Kendra and the group of us that are working, trying to kill some of these things that we believe are bad. I mean, we're looking downstream to see how these things can and will be used. I mean, if you're looking at something and you think, oh, well, that looks like a good idea on the surface, but if you're not looking downstream to look and see what the intentions are of the people who are pushing it, and that's what you have to pay attention to, is who is behind this. It doesn't matter whether you think that it looks like a good idea. And yes, do we want to grow the economy in Oklahoma? Absolutely. Do we want to grow opportunities in Oklahoma to keep our kids and our grandkids here? Absolutely. But do we want to do it at the cost of individuality? Absolutely not. And that's exactly what we are seeing by looking downstream at these things. And when they tell us, you can't say this, or, we don't want, you're coming out against something you don't know about, they're the ones that really don't know what they're talking about, because they're not looking downstream and they're not caring who the people are. And maybe they know who is behind it, but they don't know the background and the history of some of these groups. And if you're not paying attention to origins and foundations of where these things are coming from, you're not going to get it. And really what it just feels like is Senator Paxton and some of the other ones were just saying, sit down and shut up. We don't want to hear from you. And that is very insulting. As a former legislator, don't tell me to sit down and shut up when I have done my due diligence. I have done the background work. You should be doing the background work as well. And if I've got something that I feel like needs to be talked about, or any of the constituents that they have feels like there's something that they need to know about, they need to stop and read it and take that information in and then do with it what they think. What they're doing is they're trying to shut us up so that we will stop talking, so that they don't have any conflicting ideas or narratives that may go against what they're trying to push. And it's the people who are pushing it who have no idea.
Sherrie, do you think, are we giving them too much credit, saying that maybe they're not looking down far enough, or maybe they are looking down and they want to keep control. Maybe they don't want, the competition, the kids educated correctly, the people being aware. Maybe they are looking down in a pretty far manner.
Well, and the reason why I say that is that I think you've got three different groups. You've got the groups that go, oh, well, so-and-so thinks this is okay. I don't have the time to research it, so I'm just going to go with so-and-so says. Then you've got the group that says, oh, well, this looks like a good idea to me. I'm going to go ahead and just support this, not looking downstream. And then you've got the groups that look downstream, and you've got two groups, the ones that look downstream or the ones that listen to those who have looked downstream. You've got those that stand up and go, oh, wait, they've done their homework. I need to listen to this. And then you've got the other ones that say, those people are crazy. I'm not going to listen to what they say. And they vote however they feel like they should vote on it. And so I'm not giving anybody a pass here. I'm just saying, if you look at the differences like the Democrats have their own reason for voting for it. And then you've got the 3 or 4 different factions of Republicans that have their own reasons for voting for it. And so I think that we have to say, what are the problems here? Why are these people voting yes when this is very bad? And then go after the way to help those people understand better. Some of them are going to listen to us. And how many votes, Jenni, have we managed to flip to our side because we've educated them? And how many have just stood their ground and said, nope, I'm still going to vote for this, and they don't care that anybody's done the research and anybody's done the homework. And, those are the people who have their feet firmly planted in places that we need to question why they are sitting in a Republican seat.
Well, it's a season of exposure right now. I feel like
Yes.
all of these painful scenarios we're going through right now are creating something really amazing that's going to come up. And that is, people are showing us who they are and we need to believe them. And there's also a group of Oklahomans who are really have really bonded together and grown over the last 5 years. That group has done some amazing things, flipped some seats. Representative Jim Shaw speaking at an event that I was at last night. Someone spent, I think, $1.2 million to keep their seat out there. And that seat was
Kevin Wallace.
Oklahomans who care and have a heart for their community. We are not the minority anymore. And all of you, please listen to me. This is not the time to let off the gas pedal. Mm-hmm. This is the time to dig in. Just as a mother giving birth, we're about to give birth to something amazing. Please stay involved. Please don't give up. The pain is all going to be worth it. We know who we are. We know what's right. One by one being awakened to a system that someone said the other day, basically what you have now is corrupt or non-corrupt, period. There's no in between. You have people who are doing things for personal selfish gain, and you have people that are serving with the heart of Christ and doing what the public wants them to do. And those are really the boxes that we fit in now. In the education piece and understanding what's happening, it's our duty as citizens to make sure the people around us either go to meetings, understand what's happening, to educate them the best we can. Don't be shy about talking about politics. My husband, every time we're at something, we were at a crawfish boil Saturday and someone asked me something political and I just saw Shay go, oh, because he knew we were going to be there for 30 minutes, telling him all the things. But this is really a season of change. And I'm excited about it and I'm looking forward to it. And it's hard. It's hard to see all my work trashed. I'm human. I'm emotional too, in that sense. But I also know that this is happening for a reason. And without these turkeys showing us that they can't fly, we would never know this stuff was happening. So please continue to open your mouth and disregard the Oklahoma people, because now we see you. We see you.
Yep. Well, I just want to point out something. I'm going to follow up on what you had said, Sherrie, because there are a lot of different camps. One of the things that the Marxists, communists, whatever you want to call them, and I'm far right by even using that term, don't forget. So one of the things that they did want to do, and that was in their manifesto, was to split apart the narrative of one nation under God, one nation as a group. They had to split everybody into little tiny groups because factions are extremely easy to be controlled, because all you have to do is message one faction who will then now be mad at this faction, who will be mad at this faction. And you spend more time, everybody ends up fighting one another instead of fighting the government, which is the one giant problem. Yep. So what they're doing right now is 100% by the playbook, by the Marxist playbook. All you have to do is hold on. I got to keep my book here. You need to read the Skousen book. What is it, Michael?
5,000 Year Lead?
No, the other one. The one where he breaks down.
Naked Communist.
Thank you, Naked Communist. I keep forgetting to put that book right by my desk, which I need to do. But the Naked Communist, basically, and they read the manifesto into the congressional record, and I believe it was 1968 or 72, somewhere in there. So, I mean, it back then, people in our Congress even understood what the issue was. So what we need to do is remember that this is all by the communist playbook. We know that it is because it's been published. They published it. It's been out there. We've had congressmen read it into the record. Leon Skousen wrote a whole book on it. We know that it's a real and true thing, despite what we might be called, what the name calling might be associated with saying these facts and this truth.
Yeah.
even people with common sense, just with common sense, who haven't read The Naked Communist or the Congressional Record or anything else like that, even people with common sense should be able to look at the situation, I believe, at this point in time and say, gosh, we have all these separate groups. They keep grouping us into these different groups. How are we going to be able to do anything? Because we're all fighting one another. That is the plan. The plan is that. So what we need to do at this point in time is say, what is the prime directive as an American? Well, the prime directive is the Constitution. I have another one sitting over here, the Constitution of the United States. So if you stop and you say, okay, I don't care if you're a Democrat, I don't care if you're a Republican. We live in the United States of America. It's governed by the Constitution of the United States of America. That's where we stop and start, right? We stop and we look at that and we say, okay, well, so we're not supposed to be able to do this. We're not doing that. I mean, there are things that we should not be doing that we are doing right now that our government is doing to us, but we can't see because we are much more embroiled in calling one another names and popping people into groups. And I can tell you right now, after reading some of the things that I read last night when I wasn't sleeping, it's a global thing, and our president is one of those global people who are, you know, we have to stop saying Republican, Democrat, whatever. We have to be looking at what people are doing and applying those actions to what the Constitution says. That's the only way to solve this problem.
Yep, I agree. And, you know, having been in the legislature and knowing a lot of these people, you know, especially those in the House, you know, I can see, especially now that I have stepped away and I can look in, having that knowledge, I can see who those people are, who consider themselves intelligent individuals who think that the Marxist takeover is not real. They don't believe it. And so they are in complete denial of this. And as long as you're in complete denial of it, you are going to succumb to the wiles of their ways, and you're going to buy into what they're doing, because like I said, we are able to take what we see and we go, okay, where are they going to go with this? What are they going to do with this? What does this look like downstream? And they're not willing to take that leap because they don't believe it.
Yeah. Well, they're going to buy into it also, Sherrie, just for the sheer fact that communism, socialism, Marxism, it all, it provides convenience for people, no responsibility. I mean, let's face it. If you want to have liberty, you better be pretty self-sustaining and 100% responsible, because now you are responsible for your health. You're responsible for, all your food. You're responsible for yourself, 100%. And people don't want to take that. They don't want to sacrifice their bread and circus in today's time.
And they don't want to work that hard.
Yeah. Like Lisa's comment up there, Jenni, about socialism. People think it's good. And I've literally had very good friends of mine who, they're Christians, they're conservatives, they make pretty good conservative choices most of the time. They literally want the government just, I can't even think of the name of it, but just where they're going to pay it, they're going to give you $1,000 a month, to live on. They think that's a good idea. They want programs like that to help them out so they don't have to be as responsible.
Yeah. So I just got finished watching. I still have to read Bonhoeffer. I have the book, but I haven't read it. And
you'll love it.
Yeah, I watched the documentary and I also watched the movie Bonhoeffer. And if you want to understand what they're trying to do in America, go look at what happened in Germany and under Hitler's rule. And I mean, Bonhoeffer is a perfect example that the story tells what they are trying to do in America. I mean, the takeover of the church over there and what they tried to do in the church. I mean, it happened in England, it happened in Germany, and now they're trying to do it in America, and it's working. They're taking over the American church. When you get to the American people, yes, I know, Julia, I've got to get into it. I just have so many other ones that are ahead
well,
of it.
And it's a 450-page book, I believe. Yeah, it's not short.
It is a long book. I think it's like 10 hours or something on Audible. And so, yes, it is very deep and very, very complicated. But, if these people who are doubters about what they want to do to America, they need to go look and see what they did in Germany and understand how, not what they did, but how they did it. That's the key. It's not, I mean, they were able to accomplish, some really horrific things, and it wasn't a whole lot of people that managed to do it. It was just a handful of people, and it was because they had a whole lot of people who just, they were silent. I mean, I could go on again, but anyway, they need to go watch Bonhoeffer and see how they managed it.
You know what's so wild, Sherrie, is Jenni and I mean, we've looked at it multiple times just with the reading of that naked communist passages into Congress. I mean, if you literally just look at the tenets that they've spelled out, just a normal rational person, just go read those tenets, that, the 40 something goals or 50 goals, whatever they say. I mean, literally every single one of those have come to fruition in today's time. So, I mean, if you can't just rationally as a person try to disconnect yourself and say, man, has this happened? Have they eliminated prayer here? Have they installed homosexuality here and there? And have they, all those tenets is just mind blowing. That's actually what happened. And the other thing was universal basic income. That's what my friend was talking to me about. They think that's the greatest idea ever.
Well, you know what we need to do, Michael, actually, and I think we need to stick it in someplace. We need to go through the Communist Manifesto. Yeah. We need to go through just the list, and just have everybody look at the list and talk about it. I want to throw this comment out because nothing can make sense or require critical thinking. We all need to be so open-minded, our brains fall out. And I do think that's another one of the bottom lines, because don't forget, Senator Paxton called us mean, or whatever the terminology, he was, because we made a comment about something specific, or we were dealing with a specific issue. We can't do that anymore. We have to love everybody. We have to it's the same thinking that goes into, Sherrie, what was the bill that they had up this year where they tried to well, they did. I mean, good night. It's already done. We're now under this law where if you say that the Jews killed Jesus, we can be fined because we're anti-Semitic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't remember what the bill number is.
I don't remember either, but this happened in our, just like we're fighting a bill right now that's going to put kids into a database to create a situation in which children are being trained for jobs, because jobs are more important than a child's education. People are going to completely fall into this. And we've got our Senate who, the Chamber of Commerce and Americans for Prosperity, who is that's a bad organization. They're all about school choice, which is basically trying to open up the state to religion, which is going to ruin religion. Not that they've already done that by themselves by taking a tax break from the federal government. But the point of the matter is that we've got these groups outside that are paid by people like the Kochs, who are not Republicans in any way. I mean, you could at best call some of their things libertarian, but they're mainly leftists. Walmart, the Chamber of Commerce, all of these private organizations. And I died laughing the other day on the floor. Senator Pugh on bill, I think it's 662, which is another one of the workforce bills, literally said, and I'm going to pull it so we can have it out there. Would it surprise you that a private organization brought this to us? No, I'm sorry, Senator. It would not surprise me at all. But what does surprise me is that it's okay for a private industry or business or organization to bring you legislation while you're not following what the private individuals who voted you into office are requiring you to do, which is to protect their liberty and not make their children cogs in a machine.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Very, very, very frustrated. Anybody else?
It's all just so frustrating, and it has been. I've heard this from several of my former colleagues that this has been the worst legislative session in history. That there have been no conservative bills passed. And I'm thanking God that I wasn't there this session, just because I would have been one more vote. I know, against some of these things that have come forward, but I don't believe that my vote would have helped. And I don't know if my voice would have helped or not. I've tried to share those, the information with my colleagues, but again, we've got some whose feet are so firmly planted in the lobbyist camps and agency camps. Let's just be honest that it's not just lobbyists, but it's agencies that I don't know that it would have been stopped. It would have had to have been stopped. There were several things like the school-based healthcare. I was a very strong voice against that while I was in there. And, I was very honest with Speaker McCall about the dangers of it. And I don't know if my voice helped in that matter, but I do know that we never heard it in the history while I was there and while I was talking to him about it and telling him how bad it was. And so, and now, how much of it have we heard this year? And so I don't know. I'm just so frustrated with how everything went this year. And I'm not sure what we can do. I mean, 224 is going to pass, 662 and 663 are going to pass. And we're going to have to get somebody in the governor's office and in the State Department of Ed's office and in the speaker and the pro tem's offices who are willing to say, no, we're not going to do this to our families and to our students and to our state in order to be able to repeal it. And I want to be hopeful, but I'm not seeing that as long as the current leadership is in place. And we've got another year of them. Don't forget, we've got another year of them.
And there's no question about that. We do, because next year is an election year, but that, unfortunately, our legislative session starts in February, which is not post-November. So that's true. But I do, the points that you make, though, Sherrie, are salient. Because what we need to do is we need to use all of the information that we've been collecting from this session, all the times that they've gone rules. Who needs rules? Mm-hmm. Isn't that what Napoleon basically said at one point? I think it was. So they've completely trashed their own rules. They've created a set of rules that just allow them to do whatever they want. They've taken the voice of the public and demonize the voice of the public in order to tamp that voice down and make it unpalatable to the people who aren't paying attention. They've split us all into groups. I mean, we could go on and on and on and on, but what we need to do is this. We need to say that if you're not behind repealing this Jeb Bush Chamber of Commerce workforce kids as widgets agenda, you will not be elected. And if you're for it and you voted for it, you're out of there. That was a 3-strike deal. You're done. You're out.
Yep.
And if we don't stand on this and make these changes and get the people who are coming in, who are asking for our votes, because don't forget, they will be asking for our votes. And if we say, hey, I can't vote for you unless you're willing to repeal the kids as widgets workforce crap, if you're not willing to stand on proper rules and stick with those rules when you convene the legislature, we're not going to have any of you. And if that means that I mean, we'd rather have nobody than somebody who's going to treat us like plebes, which is what we're being treated as now.
Yeah. Well, and there's two things that are very concerning about that, is that we are no longer a state that is a Democratic republic if we've got Republicans telling other Republicans to sit down and shut up. And then the other part of that is that I think that we need to sit down, get together and create a campaign, just like anybody who is running for office would create a campaign, and they come up with several points that say, here are the things that we stand on, here are the things that we expect, and then those that are going against those things, we go after them. And what it's going to take is money. We're going to have to pull money together in order to be able to push that campaign forward, because it will be in several different districts, and it will be across the state. And so I say that we run it as a campaign just like any other candidate would.
Well, and don't forget, boots on the ground is what beat out here in Lincoln County. That's what got Jim Shaw over the line. Absolutely. It wasn't the $1 million that Kevin Wallace spent as his opponent. No. It was the people willing to believe that Jim was going to do what he said, who went out and knocked the doors and got where they need to be. So it doesn't always have to be about money, but it, by God, does have to be about principles.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, once we create that campaign, then those people who are the voice of that campaign need to be in every single solitary GOP meeting, and every civic organization and every grassroots organization, going, just like I said, just as if we were running a campaign for office. We need to run a campaign that says, if you are for these things and if you are against these things, you are no longer welcome in your seat. And that's just how we're going to have to approach that. We're going to have to be well organized, because we know that they are, and they are very well funded. And so we're going to have to be very creative with our campaign and the way that we go about it.
And if you have a minute, sorry, Jenny.
No, go ahead.
If you have a minute, I was watching Gabe Woolley and Jim Shaw speak last night, and I was thinking about, as freshman legislators, how devastating to not have a single bill that you put forward heard, or maybe they had one, but not very many. And I was thinking, if we had a minute, we should all really give a little bit of encouragement and love to these strong senators and representatives, because they are the minority. I mean, very minority. And how do we expect them to keep going if we aren't the wind beneath their wings? And so I was thinking, it'd be really nice if we could reach out to them and thank them for their bravery and for doing what's right, and representing us as people and seeing us as people.
Yeah.
Well, I think at the end of this session, one thing that we have to do is we are going to have to take some bills that specifically deal with Republican principles. For example, not growing government, all this workforce stuff. The bill that they put out on 224, or the amendment that they put out on 224 today, was, we had Representative Chad Caldwell saying for many arguments on the floor now, this isn't going to cost anything. Well, today there's a huge cost addendum that's been made to that bill, because we're growing government. So on every growing government bill, on every bill that was stopped, that was going to protect liberty and property of people that didn't get heard, or that did usurp the right to liberty and property of the people need to be brought out, and the people who voted for that made clear, the people who voted against that made clear. So many people don't pay attention. They go live their own lives. They have things that they have to do. I would be up at the Capitol as soon as we get off of here today, trying to talk to people about 224, but I had 2 things scheduled that I can't fix. I mean,
Yeah, I'm with you, Jenni. It's frustrating. It's very frustrating.
And there's a lot of people in this battle. I mean, there are conversations happening that I haven't seen before happen. There are people joined together, and we're coming to some common agreements on where we need to go. And I think that when the strong battle, the battle that we can't walk away from happens, you're going to see a movement that's going to be incredible. I mean, we're Oklahomans. We don't back down from a battle.
Well, I do want to believe you. And in the time that Julie and I, for example, have been involved
A long time.
I do believe that I've seen there is a huge surge in people who have been activated, whose eyes have been opened, who are looking out at the political landscape now, thinking to themselves, what happened here? I'm grateful for that. We need to continue to build on that. And I agree with what you said earlier, Kendra. We cannot give up. And Denise McIntyre a minute ago said, put the pedal to the metal. We absolutely, this isn't the time to grow weary, faint and weary. We may not grow weary in doing good. As Jesus told us, we may not grow weary. Well, actually, I think Paul said that. But the point of the matter was,
Oh, Jesus.
well, hey, we can't. I mean, we can't grow weary in doing what is good. We have to put the pedal to the metal. And
sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, what Julie is saying is true. And if we don't decide that we're not going to do that, and we don't decide that right now, and we don't put the pedal to the metal, it's our fault. I mean, while we're pointing out here, all those fingers are pointing back this direction.
Yeah. Sometimes you hear people say, well, why is it that all of these activists, tend to be old people, the gray hairs?
I hate that.
I do too. And obviously I've covered mine up. But anyway, I want us to change the narrative in being insulted by that, and change the narrative and say, listen, we have young people who are out raising their families, who need those of us who have the time and the knowledge and the wisdom to stand up for what is coming against them. And that's the narrative that we need to use. We need to stop allowing them to intimidate us and tell us that we're old and, that we need to just, go enjoy our retirement, and tell them, you know what, we're out here helping the young people. We're fighting for their futures. And so, why don't you go sit down and shut up? Sorry.
So I want to read something. This is sorry. I was looking in this is our text thread this morning, Sherrie, I'm reading. So somebody is sharing a comment from Dave Rader. This is the person who told us the other day that he was a personal friend of Mr. Vandenhend. And I was of the opinion, now help me if I'm wrong, but I was of the opinion that it would be to vote on a person that you were personal friends with if you're on a committee and you're voting for a person that you're personal friends with was a conflict of interest. I mean, no, but this is Dave Rader, who's on the Senate Education Committee, who was a personal friend, is a longtime personal friend of Mr. Vandenhend, who was.
I think he said.
Say again.
I think
50, I'm sorry.
50,
Okay,
50.
50 years.
Mhm.
And that we were all mistaken. And he went on to say how he was personally offended about all of these people who had written him emails about Mr. Vanden Hende and didn't know who he was. And I think, Julie, you can also pop up the scripture that says, because Mr. Vanden Hende had said how, that he's a Christian, he, said that, that you will be known by your fruit. So that means that you may not know somebody, but you can know them by their actions.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, that's scriptural. If we're going to talk Jesus, that's scriptural. And so, but we weren't able to have an opinion about his actions or anything that surrounded him because we didn't know him. And so Senator Dave Rader has told a constituent this morning, thank you for writing, you have misread SB 224. So not thank you for your input. I can see your perspective. I will take that under, no, just you've misread it. I'll do what I want. That's Senator Dave Rader.
And you know what that says to me? That says to me he doesn't understand the bill and he doesn't understand its purpose in the long run, is that he is reading it for the words on the page and not understanding what comes from it downstream. Again, that total blindness to what are they going to do with this in the long run? What is their plan? Why do they need this?
See, you're being very generous. What I think that means is I've subscribed to the chamber and I appreciate their donation to my campaign every year, and I'm all good with it.
Yeah.
We're about at 142. Kendra, you've been pretty quiet. Do you have anything? Well, and Sandy, thank you for backing me up there, Sandy. I appreciate that. That's not a defensive position. So anything to close out, Kendra? We've kind of.
I think I'm just kind of worn out with the whole thing at this point a little bit. So it is what it is. I'm still active in many arenas. I'm going to stay active. So the blessing about me is I don't have to have a seat or a position to continue to make change. And as a matter of fact, there are some people who might be sad that I don't have to tone it down now and that I can say what I want. But there are lots of good things happening in the GOP party. There's just a lot of good. So I just don't want politics becomes hard for people because they get so discouraged. And it's about these small steps and these minute group of people doing big things. And we just have to, 10 steps is 10 steps. I was watching some movie it was an old movie with Pierce Brosnan and Owen Wilson, and they were running from some bad guys. And they were like, we're not getting away. We're not getting away. And Owen Wilson would look at his wife and say, 10 steps is 10 steps. And I love that because we're moving forward. We're growing together. Our country is not the country it was when we were all kids. And I think if you keep your focus on what our grandkids' America is going to look like, it'll empower you and give you that boost of energy you need. Because really, guys, it's not us that are going to pay this price. When the landscape of America drastically changes, I think it's going to hit our grandkids the hardest. They're not going to know the kind of world we knew. And it's worth fighting for. And I have a great feeling that Oklahomans, we're going to get the hardest because we're going to get hit the hardest because Oklahoma is the center of America, the Bible Belt, a very strong Christian state. So the opposition is going to come strong and hard, but we've weathered many storms together and we're going to keep doing that. Nothing's changed for us.
I don't know about you, Michael. How are you good for that being the end? I thought that was phenomenal.
Oh,
Sherrie,
yeah.
I know he's speechless. Kendra got him speechless.
Yeah.
No, my mic was on mute, actually. Yeah, no, Kendra's the best. She can sum it up.
You guys are the best. I just want us to keep going. Like, I'm so fired up. You want to light a little fire under Kendra Wesson? Congratulations. Fire lit.
I reposted, I don't know if you saw it, but I reposted a quote from Nancy Mace. And I know she has been criticized a lot in the public square recently, but she said in a speech when she was talking about her sexual abuser, she said, "Let the bridges I burn today light the way." And that is exactly how I feel about it. It's like I'm going to keep fighting, and if I burn bridges along the way, well, so be it. Let it light the pathway that I'm going down. So.
Yeah. Maybe those are the fires of liberty.
Oh,
they are. No, maybe they are.
Let the burning bridges become the fires of liberty.
Yep.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us. We so appreciate you. And on Friday, we're going to have Charles Key, who's going to explain. He's going to talk about his book on good government and explain specifically what you're seeing now and how we've gotten here and what we need to do to fix that. And then at 1 p.m. on Friday, Mary from V1SUT is going to come back, and we're kind of going to do a wrap up of some of the things that we've seen for this week and some of the really bad, noxious gunk that's been going on. So I really honestly do wish that you would continue to, and so many, we have many hundred people on again this morning. So thank you so much for being with us, and just continue to share, and open the eyes of people around you. And remember that a small group of committed individuals can light those fires of liberty. Mm-hmm. So thank you guys for being with us, and we'll see you again on Friday at 9.
Bye, guys. Thank you. Have a good day.